Hey everyone, this is Coy from Over Mountain Games, and I hope you're doing really well out there, still staying safe during COVID. This is our Painted Roulette episode number 1, actually, of Oloch, our iconic Warpriest. As you can see here, I'm kind of getting him opened up, cleaned of any releasing agents, and ready to get painting. Really excited to jump into this one. I'd be lying if I said this wasn't a model I wanted to paint when I originally bought him. Kind of knew a little bit what was in our grab bags here, but I had a little bit stronger of an idea, and this is definitely one I wanted to go with. It just so happens to be, it ended up being our first one. Really excited to jump into the painting here. Let's see what we do. After a little bit of a airbrush mess up, I had to fix it very quickly. But before we start priming here, we got a little bit of some Stynylrez Res Badger Black. It's going to be a really well covered primer. I enjoy using it. I haven't been airbrushing very long. This is still something that's fairly new to me, but for the most part, I've actually really enjoyed it. A lot better than rattle cans. Having a pot there really makes it a little bit better. As you can see, I kind of blow over the model. I wasn't really holding on to him or anything. I didn't have any gloves on me, so I decided to prime him laying down on my shop towel here. I think I got some pretty good coverage. The airbrush allows you to get in places I don't think rattle cans truly can. But an airbrush, it lets you get all over. You should see here in a minute I start picking it up and getting into it a little bit more before we head into more of a zenithal highlight of white and gray. In fact, it's a gray that's actually mixed from the black here and the Stynylrez, the Badger Stynylrez white. I decided he needed a base, and I didn't quite want to print him out one on my 3D printer this time, so I decided to glue him to a 32mm base. 32mm is used in Everheart for all characters, and since this will be a Warpriest and used for most of our armies here, I decided to go ahead and put him on a 32mm. Figured it'd do well for him. Using my big old jug of Insta-Set there to make sure the model sticks very quickly, even more than the Insta-Set glue can itself. Here I decided to put on some earth texture from Vallejo's diorama effects for his basing, because I wanted him to be in a sort of wondrous wasteland, to have him wander through a wasteland anyway. I didn't exactly like the brown that comes with this, and I didn't want it to be an after effect we would have to do later, though it is still involved in our final cleanup process for the model. I thoroughly wanted this to be a upfront step for us. So I went ahead and applied this all over, and including kind of melding his little base that he comes with being a Reaper model in with the base from our war game. Now that we have his basing effects on, and the fact that I fixed my airbrush for the next time, I still had a little bit of black in my airbrush, and again, pretty new to this, but I mixed in my white, not really even thinking of what would come out of it, and we got a nice gray. I think it's even better than the Badger Stynylrez gray that I got in a bottle with this kit. I actually really like the way it looks. It has a nice soft Mechanicus standard gray to it. It is going to be a very solid undercoat used for any kind of highlighting, especially since we're going to go with dull colors here, or more on the dull side in color. It would work really well with bringing out some of those colors even on a low light, so to say. And now we finally have some white coming out, and we're getting our top layer put on. I didn't do a pure zenithal from right above. It actually is at a little angle. I still think it works well for having a top highlight here on the model. Overall, very satisfied with the way it came out. So now we're starting with our base coat of our first kind of duller color, Xandri Dust. Wanted to kind of bring out a more dull color on the tabard, his lining of his armor, and more of the cloth bits that go around this guy. He doesn't have a ton, right? He is more of a Warpriest, so there's a lot of armor, metal pieces, large sword, pieces on his banner, accents, even a scroll which has some metal pieces on there. So not a ton of cloth, but I didn't want to use the same blues, reds, and purples I've been using in a lot of my personal painting and commission painting as of late. Really want to do something different. And kind of the goal of this series, right, is to have something that is a little bit different than regular painting. Maybe push myself to do something different, or not use a certain color, or use different colors I never have. So in this case, I really wanted to use a duller Xandri Dust, move into using an orange on his skin, inspired kind of by the Maghar orcs, which from World of Warcraft, which we'll see here in a second. So here is one of my first kind of, I wouldn't say failures, but a little mistake I didn't see coming. This dwarf skin from Vallejo model color that I have here, or Vallejo game color rather, is one that I've had sitting for quite a while. I didn't expect it to be as translucent, I should say, as it is, but it ended up coming out really translucent. I knew something was wrong. Turns out I didn't shake the bottle as well as I had thought, and you will see that it will be fixed a little bit later on, but as of now, yeah, that orange looks just absolutely awful. Luckily, we get it fixed, and he looks a hell of a lot better here towards the end. Wanted to paint some different colors on his different accessories here. So like on his drum here on the belt, kind of off screen, I am painting it on Bugman's Glow. I didn't intend for it to be like a human flesh or anything like that, anything weird, but kind of like a stretched animal skin that can have some percussive elements to it. Because he has a war drum. I mean, come on, you kind of have to have some kind of cool aesthetic piece to it. All in all, I really like the drum kind of hanging off. I think it adds a lot of flavor to this model overall. The banner, his big sword, all cool stuff. The scroll on his hip, really nice too. But that drum, I mean, that really seals in the deal that he is a war priest, a war chanter in a sense, if you will. His accent pieces, I wanted to do in a bronze. The bronze from P3, Formula P3, is actually really good for this. It kind of reminds me of some of the older GW metallics, which were a lot better. In terms of all of his accent parts and pieces, it looks fantastic. I didn't want to do silver, though silver will be involved later on. I figured this would just be a good accent piece to bring a little bit of interest to the model that standard iron or silver would not do, or even gold. For his main iron colors, I wanted to do pig iron from Formula P3. I like it because it's very close to Leadbelcher, and I've never had good luck with Leadbelcher from Citadel. This isn't necessarily a slight on them. I've just never picked up a pot that worked really well that wasn't super watery. This one, I do have to admit, I had to fix this one along with the bronze, but it was pretty worth it for the end product because I really like it, and I was glad I was able to save it because this one's kind of been sitting on my shelf for a while and I knew I had to use it in a piece, and I figured this would be a perfect piece for it. Really dark irons with it, make it look like he's been traveling for a while, and B, just kind of had it from maybe some priests that taught him in the past, or something to that effect, just really giving him a lot of character history just through painting. I was thinking about that a lot as I was doing this model up. I really wanted to incorporate some Everheartness into him, some just worldly traveler priest is what I kind of imagined. That along with a warbound priest. I mean, he's going off to fight the denizens of the netherworld, and that's never an easy task, but it looks like he's pretty well prepared for it. So I wasn't entirely truthful. I did end up using some primary colors. I really enjoyed Mephiston Red from Citadel, so I ended up using it for his banners. I think he needed not a bright red, something a little more muted, which we'll see after washes will look like. It needed to be a little bit more of a darker, more crimson red, just to kind of signal and herald his coming, and to maybe represent someone, a village, a city, whatever he might fight for here in the future in Everheart. And here is what our Warpriest looks like after some touch-up and before our washes. The skin is looking already pretty good just as a base coat. Really like that drum. The banners are looking really heraldic. And his skirts and his flowy parts and his cloth look amazing. I really enjoy that Xandri Dust color being on there. Here is our Warpriest after washes, looking a lot more grungy, on the road kind of guy. I even do a little bit more of some washes on his skin and his banners to bring out that crimson and to really seep in and get some good looks going there on his skin. His sword looking mighty big, dirty from battle. It looks like it hasn't been cleaned in too long. Now I'm just going back and reapplying some of our base colors as a highlight to bring back up that color from where it was when it got a heavy black wash on it from Nuln Oil. I figured maybe it would be a good launching point. I didn't want to go for any nice blends or really deep contrasts or anything. I wanted to go for stark contrast. So what I mean by that is I wasn't really trying to blend any colors together, any wet blending. I wanted it to be very stark, hard lines on him that don't blend together, like I said, but kind of bring out a lot of color. And again, really exposes that kind of grungy slash hardcore element that I'm going for. So I mentioned earlier that I was heavily inspired by World of Warcraft's Mag'har orcs, specifically the ones from Outlands back in the Burning Crusade before the model changes in Warlords of Draenor and before they were introduced as an allied race in Battle for Azeroth. I thoroughly enjoy their kind of muted browns and muted orange that they have. I figured though, as I was working on this model, I didn't exactly, I don't think, know how to execute that, but also I didn't exactly want to execute that. I started putting on that orange and I saw how bright it was. The tone is supposed to be for dwarves, but I figured it would work really well in this orc, and I was right. I really enjoyed the brightness, so I leaned into that a lot here on these highlights, really highlighting his kind of ripped flesh that he has. I say ripped. His more defined flesh that he has here, and I thoroughly like the effect that I came out with. I started to do some sharp edge highlights on a lot of his things, like his holy symbol, his drum, and on other places like his banner, and I decided I really like where it's at. Oddly enough, I was kind of struck by a sense of completion. I know there's a lot that can be done on this model. You can push some of the boundaries a little bit further, but for the kind of tabletop quality that I'm going for, I think this actually is in a pretty good spot. So I ended up kind of stopping and just starting to work on the base, which, coming up here shortly, I really ended up liking. For the base, I started to dry brush with Dawnstone. I thought it was a really good and easy to use dry paint, and it looked fantastic on this base. But I needed something a little bit more. I needed something actually on the base. So I had an old Warhammer 40k basing kit sitting here on my hobby desk, and inside it had some rocks that actually keep our coloration that we have from our model. So I threw those on there, and I took some of the larger rock side, not some of the smaller granite ones, and threw them in some very strategic places here on the model. And with that, our model is complete. I had an absolute blast working with these colors, just trying to stay away from primary colors like reds, blues, purples, greens, stuff of that nature, and moving more into a more muted tone really was a good challenge in a sense for me. Something a little more realistic, I would say, as much as a realistic orange orc can be, I suppose. No matter if we're in the fields of Faerun or the battlefields of Macynthia, that is another model up on the shelf. Thanks for watching.